Welcome. My name is Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. Today I'm going to be talking about how to create dynamics, or your louds and softs on the violin. So I'm going to talk about loud first. Now there's three components that I think that make up playing loud on the violin, and that is your bow, playing near the bridge, and how much bow to use. So I'll talk about the soft in a second, but if you want to play loud, basically, to cut a long story short, you need to be playing close to the bridge, not too close to the bridge, or you'll get that thin kind of scratchy sound, but you need to be closer to the bridge so you get the loud sound. You need to play with a flat bow so that you've got the most hairs on the string. Some people do play tilted. I do play tilted as well, and you will when you get to sort of a more advanced level. But when you do want to play loud, you need to play with as much hair as possible. So that would be the flat bow. And also putting maybe a little bit more pressure, not too much pressure, or you'll get that scratch, but putting some weight behind your arm, perhaps having a heavier arm, maybe, rather than I don't want people to get the wrong idea with too much pressure. But it's something you sort of have to play around with. And maybe just giving the bow a little bit more substance to it, so using a lot more bow. So if I just talked about, to start with, playing closer to the bridge and further away from the bridge and how that makes a difference. So if I played with a flat bow on the fingerboard or near the fingerboard, and then played exactly the same way but closer to the bridge, so I'm using the same amount of pressure in my arm there as I was near the bridge as I was further away from the bridge, but just simply because I'm further away from the bridge, it just is a lot softer because the sound is accumulating all around the bridge. So by default it's a lot softer. I am playing with a flat bow anyway, but I'm not putting too much weight into the arm, or I'm putting the same amount of weight into my arm. But you can see, experiment at home with your violin, but you can see as soon as you get close to the bridge, the sound becomes much louder, and you don't really have to do an awful lot to it to get a big sound. So just make sure you've got a flat bow, using a lot more bow as well. That sometimes that might depend on the music, and just putting a little bit more weight behind it as well. And that will just give you sort of 10% more if you want. That will just, so a flat bow, putting a bit of weight in the arm and using nice big long lengthy bows will add 10% more to the sound, as it would do just without those things, but just playing close to the bridge. So close to the bridge, flat bow, weighted arm, and lots of nice long lengthy bows, and that will give you your nice loud, or it will give you a forte type of bowing for your dynamic. Now if you wanted a much softer bow, then what you would need to do is tilt your bow a little bit. So you're playing, always tilt with the wood away from you, never bring the wood to your face. That's the wrong, because you'll get the wood hitting the bow, so the wood hitting the string, sorry. So always, it's much easier to have the bow sitting away, so the wood of the bow away from you. So don't tilt the bow with your fingers, you don't want to do that. You want to just bring your fingers a bit further forward. So have your bow grip where it should be and just tilt it forward. Never try and twizzle the bow in your hand. Just bring your arm further round so that the bow is tilted a bit further forward. Then you want to be playing closer to the fingerboard. Sometimes, if not on the fingerboard, we say no, don't play on the fingerboard, but sometimes if you want a really soft effect, I do sometimes go into the fingerboard. The only disadvantage with that is that you have to be careful when you're playing the E string, because then you can end up hitting the side of the violin there. So you just need to be a little bit careful when you're doing that. And then just have sort of a softer arm, less pressure. It's much easier to apply less pressure than it is to apply more pressure. If you apply more pressure with the arm, you're going to get that scrape. If you apply less pressure, then you will get a softer sound by default. So that was me playing with a lighter arm and then going into a heavier arm. So this is lightly, so I'm tilting the bow, I'm playing on the fingerboard, and I'm playing quite lightly as well. Not too light, so the bow doesn't go onto the strings, but light enough. And now I'll just put a heavier arm into that. So I can putting a lighter or a heavier arm can make an added difference as well. So it's almost, think light as a feather when you're bowing. You can still bow nice long lengthy bows with a lighter arm, tilting and playing on the fingerboard as well. You don't have to do really small bows, because you just have to make sure that when you're going up and down the bow that you keep the bow nice and light all the way through. So you can just have a little experiment and play around with that. So that's how you can get dynamics on the violin, and they can be very useful to put in as well. What you can also do is sometimes you can do a swell, so you can do a crescendo and then a decrescendo. So that's not so much, I do play with a tilted bow, but that's not so much trying to play near the bridge or trying to play with a fingerboard always, but it's almost as if you're putting pressure into the top half of the bow, you're letting go of the pressure on the way up. That's if you want to do from loud to soft. So you can create all different types of swells and effects, but that's how sometimes when you hear the swelling effect. So you can hear it's sort of getting louder and softer. So it may not necessarily come under a dynamic, but it just creates a nice swirl. It creates a nice expression and some nice phrasing for you. So you just need to experiment with putting pressure on the bow, and then you'll begin to realise how much pressure you can put on. If you'll know if you've put too much, because you'll get the scrape. If you've done too little, you'll get a sort of wispy sound. So it's really an individual thing. Everybody's arms are going to be different. Everybody plays in a different style, but technically that would be the way to do all of that. So I hope this has helped you guys with dynamics and all that kind of thing, and touching a little bit on expression and phrasing. Any comments, leave them in the bar underneath. I'll try and get back to you, but please subscribe and check out my other videos. We'll be right back.